Hello and welcome to Allegedly Astrology. Each week we break down the astrology that happened during some of the biggest scandals and events in history.
Thanks so much to everyone for listening to our show. And if you want to support us, you can leave a 5-star review and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on.
And if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and DM us a screenshot of your review, we'll make you a custom meme of your big three and send you a quick write-up about it. It's really cute. It's really fun.
We also have a very cool and exclusive Patreon. So if you want more awesome astrology content, join us at patreon.com/allegedlyastrology.
And make sure to follow us on social media. We're Allegedly Astrology on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and Allegedly Astro on Twitter. You could also visit our website, allegedlyastrology.com, to learn more about us and the show and book a reading with Dana.
So with that, Dana, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Luigi Mangione Part 2.
Part 2. So if you haven't listened to Part 1, go back and listen to that. But last week we covered all the key players: Luigi Mangione, Brian Thompson, and United Healthcare. And this week we're talking about the event itself. So a quick recap: Luigi had a chronic back condition. Brian Thompson was the CEO of a huge health insurance company that started to become known negatively for the way they handled and approved insurance claims.
So just two people butting heads. They never met each other, but opposites in the life that each of them were living. So what happened? The main event, why we're all here. So Brian, the CEO of United Healthcare, was in New York to attend an annual investors meeting for United Healthcare Group, the parent company of United Healthcare. And prior to his death, he faced a lot of criticism for the company's rejection of insurance claims. And again, like we talked about last week, his family had said that Brian had received real death threats because of the way these claims went in the past.
Yes. And leading up to the shooting, Luigi went missing. His mom even filed a missing persons report. But during this time, we've found out later that Luigi, he goes to New York City and he stays at a hostel.
And then the morning of the shooting, he takes a bike and goes to Midtown and does what I do every morning, goes to Starbucks. And then he posted up against a wall on the north side of West 54th Street across from the New York Hilton Midtown.
Then at 6:44 a.m., he fatally shot Thompson in front of the north entrance to the Hilton, police said. Then he fled on foot into an alley. Deny, defend, and depose were written on shell casings found at the scene. This is the 3 Ds of insurance, which is the tactics used by companies to reject payment claims by patients. So definitely it was very clear from the beginning that this was not a random shooting. This was a targeted killing. So what was going on the day that Brian Thompson was shot, Dana?
I never learned the 3 Ds when I worked in insurance. Isn't that weird?
Well, you were a broker, not the ones denying the claim.
That's true. It's very true.
But also, when I heard about the words written on the shell casings, I was like, wow, this guy was hardcore. Like, that's like a chef's kiss.
Yeah.
If you're going after
Don't
the
be racist.
CEO of... Oh, yeah.
Luigi, did a good job.
Like, not to condemn the death of the murder of a human, but I was like, wow. So that's poetic, sir.
So this was December 4th, 2024, 6:44 a.m. The sun and rising were in Sagittarius and the moon was in Capricorn. And honestly, I lost my mind when I looked at this chart. But more on that below because I already know the American chart so well. The sun and rising are in Sagittarius, and it's conjunct Mercury retrograde. So Sagittarius is the sign of dogma and belief. And with Mercury retrograde, it's about having a bone to pick about an existing issue. So it's really the final circle back, right? We will not circle back to this again if you're writing an email.
Like, there is no circling back.
Right. That's just a sinister joke for me.
Yeah.
And then the Capricorn moon has no mercy, especially for those who have the power to help others, but don't, instead, like effectively harming others. It's a little motherless in its, actions. Neptune is conjunct the IC of this chart. So it's really a surprise ending. The IC is endings. Neptune is things you never really see coming. It's a confusing death. It's the inability to find the assassin right for days. And still people are not really sure if they have the right guy. Like I sort of spoke about that in part 1, just because like the eyebrows different and like maybe also the face shape. I don't know. I haven't really stayed abreast of that, but I feel like it's maybe still going around.
I mean, believe me to believe.
I don't know. I mean, I also believe it was him. I don't know. Whatever. The eyebrows did look different. Yeah. But I don't know if he wrote it. Like, it did seem planted on him. I don't know. I honestly believe every conspiracy and none of them. So
Gemini.
Yeah, that's true. Gemini. The Sun and Mercury are opposite Jupiter and Gemini, and they're square Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So people are lying and people are suspicious. They're throwing the book at him. The government is feeling shame about how hard it was to find him. It's just sort of like a big mess, really. But it's also, they're in mutable signs, which means we're at the end of cycles. We're at turning points. These are the pivot signs that pivot into new seasons. So we know we're at this sort of seminal moment. Everyone can feel it, right? Like it's just sort of what's happening. And we don't all know what's next, really, but things are changing. It's also 2 days before Mars stationed retrograde in Leo, which is huge. It's really if this had to come down to one aspect, it would be this one. Mars is war, and it's super potent when it's stationing, either direct or retrograde. In Leo, both parties become celebrities, especially the attacker, because Mars is the attacker. So then I looked at this outside of the American chart. And once again, America has a Cancer sun, an Aquarius moon, and a Sagittarius rising. So America is in a Leo 9th house sun year, which is the house of morality and laws. This is a sign of celebrity and fame. And it's also the house of God. So what do we believe in? What's America's religion? The sun is the Time Lord. And to the degree it was conjunct America's rising on this day when Brian Johnson was shot. Brian Thompson. Brian Johnson is the guy who doesn't want to die, ironically.
Just popping in. I just forgot about America's big 3 really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Luigi having a Sagittarius rising.
Sure.
I
With
just
Pluto
feel
and his
like,
descendant, yeah.
You know what I mean? It just kind of makes sense. I don't know. I mean, his selfies, the traveling.
Oh, yeah. I trust you.
I don't know. We'll see.
Your moon is conjunct America's rising, so I believe it.
The dogmatic beliefs.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
For sure.
Luigi, hit us up.
Yeah, it would be so cool if someone let him listen to our podcast in prison. Let us know if you're listening. So the sun is the Time Lord, and it's conjunct America's rising degree. And the ascendant is also conjunct Mercury retrograde. So this is just very wild. It's putting a huge spotlight on America and our national identity. What do we believe? What do we stand for? These are things that are questions that are being asked. Definitely not being held hostage by corny corporate healthcare. That's something we definitely don't stand for, right? What is it called when something is both sides of the aisle?
Bipartisan?
Bipartisan, a very bipartisan issue. Most people have had some sort of issue with private healthcare. Even Luigi, who obviously is like, he was stood to inherit $30 million allegedly, and he couldn't afford back surgery. So,
also, I don't know if this is a real thing, but I heard that his grandparents were like, you could have all this money as long as you don't come and cry.
I think I might have looked it, or we found it out together. I definitely heard that.
Big if true.
And he's like, I don't care. I want to fuck in my Hawaiian apartment. Tell my landlord.
Help my landlord. Let my landlord know.
So Mars also stationed on America's North Node to the degree, 6 degrees. So in the perfected sign, right now, this is America's North Node in Leo. This is America's perfected sign and the house, which means this really matters. This isn't going away, and it's not a one and done moment. It's not a conversation that was isolated to that week in December. This is an ongoing thread. The North Node is what direction we're pulled in. It's fated moments, even if it feels weird, because the North Node is what we're called to do, things that we've never done before. And I don't mean like shooting people dead in the street. I mean, opening up maybe different like we've never had public health care. Actually, I went down a rabbit hole, I think last weekend or the weekend before it, and learned that the American Medical Association distributed propaganda in the mid 1900s. It used to be bipartisan, like both sides were about public health care, and then it never got passed because the AMA distributed some really effective propaganda. There's that. So yeah, the North Node is like what we're being called to do, but what we've never done before. It feels a little scary to do. And the 9th house is about courts, laws, beliefs, religions. So I think we're sort of called to at least face ourselves and think about what we believe and the laws we support. as a nation individually, maybe the South Node conjunct America's midheaven and the North Node is conjunct America's IC. So the midheaven is the reputation and the South Node conjunct the midheaven is hitting an all-time low in popularity, both abroad and at home. And this extends beyond sort of the shooting. Like, I think that's been in the news a lot lately, which I guess is no surprise. But yeah, our reputation's not doing well. In case we're the ones letting you know that, you've heard it here first. So with the South Node in the midheaven in Libra, it's also pointing to like huge injustices, but ones that are being really sort of called to attention. And the North Node conjunct the IC is a big ending. It's a call to also go within, like, what is the soul of this country? The IC is the deepest part of the chart. So what do we believe in? With fire rising Sagittarius and a fire IC, passion has to be the way out for all of us. It's going to be rooted in passion because it's a fire sign. So it's going to have to be fire. So with the North Node and the IC in Aries, it really harkens back to the soul of the nation, which is building a democracy unlike others, right? I keep seeing Bernie say that this is the longest running democracy in history. And so I think we have to do novel things, pass novel laws, or reimagine government in novel ways. I'm not a government person, but this is what the government has to do.
And Dana's not a government person.
I don't know a politician. So people are like, well, what would you do? I'm like, I'm certainly not the person to ask. I'm just the person to ask about what's going to happen.
Exactly.
What's the mood?
They work for us, remember?
Yeah, exactly. Elise Carlucci. And so it's also America's Chiron return. So we're having growing pains. It's a Chiron return in Aries too. So it's really like back again to like, what are we passionate about? What's the soul of the nation? And it's really losing passion and becoming completely disaffected before we find those things.
Our nation is soulless.
Yeah, we're really soulless right now, especially after we killed God in the 70s. Prioritizing what we do best, health, reaching out. These are all Chiron return themed. And then Jupiter was conjunct America's descendant, Mars and Uranus in Gemini in the 7th house. So this is like that Drake line. I know Drake like peak corny right now, but that Drake line, I got enemies, got a lot of enemies. Because the 7th house in nations charts is the house of enemies, open enemies. So with Jupiter as also the chart ruler, we're sort of our own enemy during this transit. Surprise, surprise. And then
I feel like everyone's just sitting back being like, America's just self-destructing and we don't have anything about it.
Like, I don't know. I think a lot of places are worried because if we sell, it's like a house of cards, you know?
I know. I mean, it's funny up until a point, and then they're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought it was funny up until a point, and then I was like, I've been saying lately, oh, shit.
Yeah, I can't buy eggs at Trader Joe's. Wait.
I've given up eggs.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so Venus and Pluto were conjunct America's Pluto in the 2nd house of profit. So then if we look at this chart around Luigi's chart, once again, Luigi has a Taurus sun and a Virgo moon. So Luigi's in a 3rd house here, and the 3rd house is the commute. So what a year to shoot someone dead on their commute while riding your bike, you know? Very 3rd house. So the North Node is conjunct his natal Venus in Aries. So this is real do or die energy, especially with his natal Venus in detriment and impulsive Aries. He's a very Venusian and Martian man with his Aries and Taurus placements. And the North Node has been transiting all of these placements since it entered Taurus on January 18th, 2022. And this is just going to extreme measures. The North Node is like, these are things he's never done before, but things he really feels called to do. It could definitely be getting radicalized for like the first time, especially if he was level-headed before then, which it sounds like he was. Maybe like everyone thought he was a nice, normal person, and now he's like a hot criminal. And Chiron is conjunct his natal Mercury, sad face. So this is sad. He's feeling like he has nothing to lose. So just doing something he believes in, not just for himself. It's very much writing a manifesto energy, maybe a solution existing that is out of reach, right? Like he could get surgery, but he has to jump through hoops to get it that he like can't, maybe financial hoops. The sun is conjunct his natal Pluto. So this is doubling down on extreme measures. He's also becoming a celebrity for going to extreme measures or, you know, committing a crime. Pluto is conjunct his natal Neptune. So this is being radicalized online, especially in Aquarius. It's having a 3D printed gun. It's the intersection of fantasy, technology, and death. It's not necessarily being lucid, but definitely gaining celebrity and being idealized for committing an extreme act and representing, like in Aquarius, he's now like he belongs to the people as much as he belongs to himself. I don't know. You know what I mean? He sort of became a folk hero overnight, and that's very Aquarius, I think, especially being like the dissident.
It's just crazy, I think, how fast it happened, too. Like, it was immediate.
Before they even knew it was before. And then when we found out he was hot, everyone was like, oh, shit, he's never going away. Like,
right. It was interesting that it was like, it was the act itself that made him heroic. And then he turned out to be someone people got pumped to get behind. But I feel like it could have pretty much been anyone. And people would have been as pumped. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know, but maybe not.
I do think it changed things that because I think he became baby girl hot, when he was so hot.
Definitely changed things.
Like, he went from being a folk hero to being like a DB Cooper, like a violent DB Cooper, to being like also baby girl, you know? So
Luigi Mangione is baby girl.
Baby girl. Saturn conjunct his natal south node and opposite his natal moon. So this is really underscoring feeling like he has nothing to lose, thinking his health has been taken away from him, and how much worse could it really get? So then we look at this around Brian Thompson's chart. Brian Thompson has a Cancer sun and a Pisces or Aries moon. So Brian was also in a third house year. And once again, the third house was commute, and he got clapped on his brief commute. The ascendant is conjunct his natal Neptune. So he really never saw it coming. Neptune was like the rising sign is like, what's the beginning? And that's whenever the rising hits, whenever a planet in your chart, that really highlights that planet at that moment in the day. The Sun and Mercury are conjunct his natal north node and Neptune. So really, he was fated to get blindsided. It's during his Mars return and Chiron return. So the Mars return happens every 2 years, and the Chiron return happens twice in a lifetime if you're lucky. Mars is aggression, it's acts of war, and the Chiron return heals or punishes or both. It's definitely getting wounded during your Chiron return is not surprising. So with the Mars return there too, especially with his Mars ruling his Aries Chiron, it's like, he got wounded for the last time. Jupiter is conjunct his natal Venus South Node conjunction in Gemini. Venus is pleasure and the South Node is karmic endings. Jupiter here is an ending without pain, I think. He died pretty quickly, so I know that that's maybe sinister, but I think he probably didn't hurt that much. I think it's also a story that has two endings, right? His life being the story. There are people who knew him and loved him. This was a real human person who existed and had children and an ex-wife and parents, I'm sure, siblings maybe. But then there are so many other people who feel that his life represents a victory because they hold him responsible for the casualties, people, their loved ones who were killed because of his policies. And so there's heartbreak, but there's also blood on his hands. And I think that that's really this Gemini story at play. And his Gemini South Node, the ending has two very real, or the end of his life has two very real, ending stories.
You know that it was the most unbiased I've ever heard you.
Thank you. Saturn was conjunct his natal Jupiter in Pisces. So this is sort of giving for whom the bell tolls, which, to be honest, I've never read that, but that does seem like an ending. What do you think?
I haven't read it.
No, is it about the bell tolling in heaven? Because I feel like that's sort of what it could be. Or, I don't know. Or in a neutral place.
That's what it's about.
You don't? I also feel like it could be about a toll booth operator, but yeah, these are just...
No, it's about an American volunteer in the Spanish Civil War who's sent to join a guerrilla band behind nationalist lines.
It's Saturn in Pisces is conjunct his natal Jupiter. So this can be him running out of luck. Saturn is karma, Jupiter is benevolence and luck, and he's, sort of reached the end of the luck for now. Depending on where his natal moon is, I see a Neptune were conjunct his moon in Pisces, or if his moon's in Aries and the North Node was crossing it. Either way, they're sort of all in this jumble, and his moon is between these degrees. So Neptune on the moon is a once-in-a-lifetime event or less. I'll never experience it unless I live to be 200. And so, Neptune on the moon is a once-in-a-lifetime event or less, and it could really relate to spiritual transition from physical to the next life, to something else. And North Node on the moon points to fated events relating to one's physical body. So a transition of sorts.
Damn. Transitions. Okay, that was a lot. Where do we even recap? There's so many conjunctions that are crazy.
Yeah.
Happened here. But Brian Thompson's death received a lot of widespread attention in the United States and led to very polarized reactions. Many public officials expressed dismay and offered condolences to Thompson's family, though also some people called attention to the practices of the U.S. health insurance industry.
And in general, opinion polls found that a majority of Americans held a negative view toward the killer and the killing, with younger respondents and liberals more likely to support Luigi. On social media, reactions to the killing included mocking Brian and United Healthcare Group and having sympathy and praise for Luigi. And also in general, again, that criticism of the American healthcare industry and health insurance industry, especially when it comes to claim denial practices.
On Twitter/X, whenever there's like some sort of injustice, people retweet that, like the tweet explaining whatever injustices with the picture of Luigi, like looking back, to suggest that that person's going to get clapped. So basically, he's just like a very big meme now on Twitter X. I mean,
He's like a modern day Robin Hood or whatever. So 5 days after the attack, someone spotted him wearing a mask at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania and alerted staff who called 911, which is crazy that they recognize him despite wearing a mask, maybe because of those eyebrows that Dana thinks look different. But anyway, when he was arrested, authorities discovered a 3D printed 9mm handgun, 2 ammunition magazines, bullets, a homemade silencer in his backpack, and also a fake New Jersey ID.
Luigi also had on him a handwritten document that expressed ill will towards corporate America and included passages such as, "Frankly, these parasites had it coming."
Just a casual 3D printed gun in a manifesto, but Dana's like, it could be somebody else.
No, I just think that the manifesto could have been planted on him, because I think it's weird that a smart person would carry around a manifesto unless he just wanted to be caught.
It's true. I mean, he clearly didn't try to hide that hard.
Yeah.
But since his arrest in the Altoona, Pennsylvania McDonald's restaurant has been flooded with negative reviews. Google has since removed the reviews because they violate the company's policies because they're not based on real experiences and do not accurately represent the location.
Okay.
So basically, they're just hating on the Altoona, Pennsylvania McDonald's for being narcs.
Yes. So what was going on when Luigi was arrested?
This was December 9th in Altoona, and it was around 9:15 a.m. The sun was in Sagittarius. The moon had just entered Aries, and the rising was Capricorn. So with this, it really harkens back to the Capricorn moon of the event. Remember when Brian Thompson was shot dead, the moon was in Capricorn. So the rising speaks to that. It's also 2 days after Mars stationed retrograde in Leo and 1 day after Neptune stationed direct in Pisces. So these stations can illuminate what you're looking for because a planet stays at the same degree for an extended period of time. So Neptune is what's obscure. Mars is the shooter, the fighter, the attacker. So it's also sort of like the manhunt. So they end up finding him. But then looking at this around Luigi's chart, the moon had just entered Aries. Like I said, it's at 0 degrees. So it's meeting the North Node and transiting his natal Venus. So the transiting moon is the present moment in astrology. So it's finally locating him after hunting him down. And Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, Mercury being communication, is conjunct his natal Pluto, Pluto being power and the government, and Pluto conjunct his natal Neptune in Aquarius. Both aspects are about locating him in obscurity and pulling him out, and him being in the headlines, like, okay, we found him. This is our guy, sort of thing.
After his arrest, a manifesto that Luigi allegedly wrote prior to the shooting was published on Substack. And the document directly addresses federal law enforcement and states that the killing of Brian was a lone act. It also references a spiral notebook containing notes and to-do lists, mentioned that the shooter's tech was locked down due to his engineering work, and it apologized for causing strife or traumas while insisting that this had to be done.
That's the part that made it seem like whose manifesto was, I really respect the federal government.
I know. This guy, I think his name was like Ken or something. He posted it on a Substack. Because he was saying that Luigi wrote this, but major news outlets like weren't publishing it.
Yeah. So, Ken Klippenstein. I like him.
Yeah. Well, where do you land now, Dana?
Yeah.
I just mean, that's a very strange, it's a strange, all of it's very strange, I guess, is where I land.
The note that criticized healthcare executive as parasites who had it coming. It also criticized the U.S. healthcare system, claiming that despite it being the most expensive in the world, America ranked roughly 42nd in life expectancy. It specifically mentioned United Healthcare's market capitalization, describing it as one of the largest U.S. companies behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart.
The note also argued that while many individuals had illuminated the corruption and greed within the American healthcare system decades ago, the problems have only continued to persist. This is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play.
Fair. Not wrong, Luigi. So once he was arrested, he was charged in both Pennsylvania and New York, and his Pennsylvania charges were for forgery, carrying firearms without a license, tampering with records for identification, possessing instruments of crime, and providing a false ID to police.
And then in New York, his charges were a lot more aggressive, including one for first-degree murder and furtherance of terrorism. And
Casual.
The charges... Yeah, the terrorism charge seems...
Do you have to kill more than one person for terrorism?
Not when it's the CEO of United Healthcare, Dana. The charges carry the possibility of the death penalty. So, pretty bleak.
Pretty bleak. So when Luigi got extradited to New York, it became a huge spectacle. People said the whole thing was weird and over-the-top theatrical.
Yeah, this was because, there were a few things going on. One, Luigi was surrounded by 17 police officers and other people like the mayor of New York, Eric Adams.
And then was on a trial at the time.
Such an idiot.
And the New York Police Department also posted these pictures of this whole thing going down. And they went viral because everybody was like, why are you doing this?
Also, Luigi had a new haircut and his brows done.
Yeah.
He looked good.
No, yeah. He had been definitely cleaned up. It seemed like people inside the jail were like taking photos of Luigi and releasing them to the public.
I saw a video of the jail screaming out to the public, like, we love Luigi. Luigi rocks.
Luigi rocks.
Screaming to people on the street.
Yeah. So what was going on, Dana, when Luigi got extradited and this whole thing went down?
So when he was extradited to New York, this was December 19th, 2024, around 3:15 p.m. in New York. And this chart has a Sagittarius sun, a Leo moon, and a Gemini rising. Three great signs. So also Venus is in Aquarius conjunct the midheaven. So this is looking fine as hell. And Venus is trine Jupiter, so its popularity, his star only rises. Jupiter is conjunct the ascendant. So Jupiter conjunct the ascendant is usually a good time. It's one aspect where you're like, okay, I want to win this. That's like if you're electing a chart, Jupiter on the ascendant, one way to try and win something. I mean, despite many other factors that you have to look into. However, this Jupiter is in Gemini, so the luck could go to your opponent or someone else unexpected. There's always more than just your motive to consider, especially and mostly because Jupiter in Gemini was ruled by Mercury in Sagittarius in the 7th house of opponents. So really, it's like, okay, all that popularity goes to your opponent who you're trying to get it to yourself. You're making this weird move. You're letting him walk around being so shivery. I kept seeing a meme where he was walking and like they had all, that picture, I think it's like of Jesus with all the wolves around him. People were putting Luigi in the middle of it.
I mean, some of the tweets about the photos were like the photographer is clearly on his side, like, making him look like the coolest person.
Hottest perp walk of all time.
Truly.
And then Mercury is conjunct the descendant. Again, so it's a divisive move. People are talking about Luigi. They're not like hailing the cops for being cool. They're like, why is he so hot? And also like he got that haircut.
Although they did talk about, there was one police officer that had on a very new pair of Nikes or something. Maybe they weren't Nikes, but somebody was wearing a very hard to get new pair of shoes walking at him.
That's also Jupiter on the ascendant in Gemini, just being so distracted. What are we even talking about? Like, this is about something huge.
Yeah, I'll try and find out what shoes he was wearing. But continue on.
And then we have the moon in Leo on the IC in the third house. So the moon in Leo is about celebrity, this rising star of criminals. And it's in the third house, which is walking. The moon in Leo is also square Uranus and Taurus. So it's a surprise response. It's way different than what they were expecting to get. The perp walk was just surprising to begin with. So we were surprised to see it. And the cops were surprised that everyone was like, you guys suck. Luigi is our new god,
Wait, I
the
found
hottest
the
guy we've ever
shoes.
seen.
So the one police officer was wearing off-white Air Jordan 5 sneakers, which are a collaboration between now deceased Virgil Abloh and Nike.
Oh.
And they are worth like over $700 on the marketplace. Everybody was like, why are you wearing those shoes?
He's like, this is my opportunity to wear my cool shoes.
So there is quite a lot of sympathy for Luigi because, he stood up to big healthcare. And again, he is hot. So there's a lot of love for him. People say that, he's this modern day Robin Hood that shed light on a corrupt and broken healthcare system that is just based on greed.
And the shooting caused tons of people to come forward on social media to attack United Healthcare practices and the health insurance industry as a whole. And the poll showed that about 81% of Americans in 2023 said they were dissatisfied with the cost of healthcare in the United States.
And in 2024, the average health insurance premium for families was about $25,000 per year, while if you were a single worker, your average was about $9,000 a year. And that was like a 6 and 7% increase from the year earlier. And then since 2000, the rise in health insurance premiums has outpaced inflation for all but like a handful of years. So all this to say, we're just paying a lot of money for stuff we'll probably get denied our claims for.
Woo frickin' who?
Just don't pay medical debt.
Honestly, just don't.
You don't have to.
You're so
That's like
right.
actually the big secret. You just don't have to.
Right.
Unless you're in like a position where you have to stay in the hospital and then you're really fucked, but you just don't have to pay those bills. Sorry. It's true.
This is not legal advice, so do not point back to this episode if you
Just say,
Yeah, definitely
allegedly
don't
astrology
quote me
said.
on this, but it's true.
don't quote me. It's true.
But you can negotiate your medical bills, so you should always try to do that. Talked about this a little bit already, but what in Luigi's chart would give him idol status?
Honestly, he doesn't have anything clear in his chart that says idol, and definitely without knowing his rising and midheaven, it feels impossible to say. But he's definitely alluring with that Venus in Aries and Mars in Taurus, the mutual reception. They're both debilitated. Or a lot of iconic people have at least one debilitated planet, and it's usually the one that sort of really speaks to sort of maybe who they are or like what they're known for, because you just really have to figure out how to do things by yourself. So, I mean, he's known for, shooting someone because he couldn't have sex, which I guess is very Venus and Mars debilitated in mutual reception. Honestly, yeah, that's really on brand for those two placements. But also, he has his Sun conjunct Mars and Taurus, and they square his Uranus Neptune conjunction in Aquarius, and that makes him sort of a person for the people, right? It's Aquarius being the sign of the people, Taurus being securing things for yourself. So getting revenge for himself, it also makes him like a folk hero. But also the transits really came through with that South Node on his Venus.
All right, so where's Luigi now? Luigi is in prison awaiting trial where he said he will plead not guilty. He's receiving overwhelming financial support for his legal defenses. And as of right now, he's received over $475,000. Is that from his family or like a GoFundMe?
Let's do like a GoFundMe.
Wow, damn. He even launched a brand new website with his first official statement to the public since his arrest, which includes, of course, an FAQ section.
Well, the FAQ isn't about him. It's about from his lawyers.
Color.
It's about questions about his case.
I want it to be
Favorite
his favorite
candy.
color.
But Luigi said he's received tons of letters and has been overwhelmed by and grateful for the support that he's received. A lot of these like letters were people talking about their stories and how his story moved them. He's pleaded not guilty to numerous state and federal charges, including the first degree murder, terrorism, and criminal possession of a weapon charges.
As someone who's learning Latin, I think that that's a good way to plead not guilty. I don't know that he's guilty necessarily.
Dana,
But also, I think that he should release his own fragrance. He's a Taurus. I think he totally should release his own fragrance.
Well, I did see him on a prayer candle already. So, all right. Well, Dana, what do we think is going to happen to Luigi in the future? Do we think he's going to go to jail? Do we think he's going to get charged? What is going to happen to him?
I'm a little afraid for his well-being. So I looked at a few charts. The first one is the North Node conjunct his natal Jupiter. This could increase his luck, but at the same time, depending on where his moon is, the South Node will be on his natal moon. This could be really not good for his luck. Mars will be on his natal North Node. This is during his nodal opposition. So the nodal opposition could be him going to prison. Pluto is conjunct his natal Neptune, so that could be some sort of unclear verdict. And then there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction on his natal Venus, but they haven't quite reached that degree, but it's still there. So this is July 8th, 2025. Uranus has just entered Gemini, which could sort of be jury nullification, which is a thing that I don't exactly know what it means, but Uranus could really split too. Like it splits two ways too much to like give a clear.
I feel like I have read about that for this, it being like a fear of happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chiron, I wonder if they would try and like bypass it because Chiron is exactly conjunct his natal Saturn at this time too, which I just think could be
so it's
punishing
like
him by keeping him in jail.
Jury nullification is when a jury votes not guilty in a criminal case, even though they believe the defendant is guilty. And that's because this could happen when jurors disagree with the law or the punishment.
That's so cool.
So again, I wonder if because of that, they would lower the death penalty or the terrorism. Like I'm not condoning someone killing another person, but Brian Thompson was basically the boss of this huge corporation that was honestly letting a bunch of people be in pain or in some cases die because they were denying them the necessary healthcare that they needed to live a life or like the affordable healthcare or whatever that they needed. So that also could play a role in that. Like, I think if I was on that jury, it would be very hard for me to be, well, as you know,
I know exactly how I would vote.
I mean, as someone who tried to go to jury duty and like literally was not even allowed to make it to the next level, I don't think I would be on the jury, but I think it would be.
I know I would never be on a jury, but
I would not be picked to be on the jury.
Same. But if I were, I do know exactly how I would vote. I don't actually think it would be that hard for me to be on a jury.
I think it would when they ask you your profession and you say astrologer. And they
I don't. I think it would be hard for me to get on one. I don't think it would be hard for me to be on one.
Oh, of course not.
I think I would know exactly how I want. I think I would just know.
You would know.
But not because I have any ability, just because.
If I ever don't want to do jury duty, I'm just going to say that my profession is astrology podcast host and see what they say.
Okay. So
where were we?
Another chart I looked at was his exact nodal opposition. And this is on April 5th, 2026. So this is about a month before his solar return that year, so it's like the last month of his fourth house year. I mean, the fourth house could really also be about endings and putting you in. The fourth house is a tough year. It's 27. It's a tough year. And so, I mean, it's one faction of the 27 club, also the nodal opposition speaks to the 27 club. Hopefully he lives. Chiron is still there to the degree on his natal Saturn. So this again could represent him being in jail. The nodal opposition could be him getting out, surprisingly, but it could also be not that. Mercury is conjunct his natal Jupiter. That could represent delivering a verdict that's in his favor. Or it could be a mistrial because Mercury's in fall in Pisces. So it could be something gets really botched. Also with Neptune and Saturn conjunct his natal Venus at this time, that sort of really speaks to the potential for things getting either botched or for him getting really unfairly treated or for him positively getting treated. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's a day chart or a night chart. I don't know how Saturn functions in his chart. I wish I did. But yeah, that's his nodal opposition. And then I looked at the three charts for his Saturn return. So the first one, because it retrogrades over his natal Saturn. So his Saturn's at 26 degrees Aries and Saturn's in fall here. So that's already tough. So his first exact Saturn return is June 26, 2027. So we're over 2 years in the future now. And Saturn represents jail, or represents confinement at least. And so at this time, we have the North Node exactly conjunct his natal Uranus. So this could be a huge plot twist. This could be having to go back and see what was done wrong, right? Or it could be bringing him back or putting him, I don't know. It's just generally a plot twist. It's also a plot twist because Uranus is exactly opposite its natal Pluto. So we have 2 Uranus transits going on here that are really significant. They're once in a lifetime. Like you could get it twice, but once would have to be during childhood. So yeah, this one's a tough call. Also, it's ruled by Mars, which would be conjunct his moon. So this will be affecting his body in some way. Maybe he's getting the surgery he needs at this time. That actually would be very interesting. If he went to jail and then ended up getting the surgery there. Who's to say? Then his second Saturn return, the Saturn retrograde return, that's September 23rd, 2027. At this time, Jupiter will be conjunct his natal North Node. So this could also be about freeing him, with Jupiter being about freedom and the North Node being about things that get done, that pull you towards the future. But Jupiter is in detriment in Virgo. And Mars is domicile in Scorpio, but it's conjunct his natal Chiron. So that is, and with Mars ruling his natal Saturn in Aries, that seems tough. That seems like it could be keeping him captive longer. So those things are hard. Also, Mercury is exactly opposite its natal Saturn. So this could be hearing a tough verdict. And then the last chart I looked at was his final exact Saturn return. And this is on March 13th, 2028. At this time, the North Node is conjunct its natal Neptune. Honestly, not that big of a transit unless you're like in jail and a huge public person. So this could be something related to his fame. Maybe he gets out of jail and then he gets canceled. Except for Jupiter is around his moon at this time. So this could be granting him some luck, even though Jupiter in Virgo is in detriment. It could be maybe an appeals court going back and finding details. Jupiter in Virgo is really good at finding details, and that's what frees him, especially because the Sun and Mars will be conjunct his natal Jupiter. That's actually something that would be very interesting that I could see happening. And especially with Saturn in Aries, I mean, Saturn in Aries, it's in fall, but I guess that could be getting punished for different sorts of things. You don't really get punished for the bad things. Maybe he gets exalted for being brave, right? I think it's possible that the moon in Libra is like, some sort of jury nullification or some sort of little detail. It could be like the cop's not doing some sort of due diligence and that's what gets him off. I don't know. But I do think that it looks like he has a really tough Saturn return, but then final one seems like it could be pretty good in his favor.
Luigi.
Interesting. A Saturn return in someone's favor? Like gasp.
Well, I guess in general, in the big picture, Saturn returns suck during the moment, but ultimately
they're
for the end of ours. We started this podcast.
True.
Look at us.
Yes. Look at me.
Amazing. Well, we will keep you abreast of the Luigi situation. And whenever there's new updates, head to our Patreon where Dana will be giving further updates and further predictions as this case progresses. But
support Italian Americans and subscribe to our Patreon.
Yes, subscribe to the Patreon for the full updates and our actual unhinged takes, because there's a lot of stuff in here that Dana said, take that out. And I took it out. But on our Patreon, we don't do that. So lucky for our patrons. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap this up. We'll see you guys next month for another 2-part episode. I'm Elise.
I'm Dana.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is Allegedly Astrology.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening.